Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Beyond Grad Show. I am so excited that we have with us Naman Pandey. Naman, I would like you to give everybody a brief introduction and then we'll get into the episode.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Firstly, big shout out to Varun and really honored to be here and grace the same platform that so many other stalwarts have graced before me and will grace after me. So just wanted to do a quick shout out to you. I really appreciate the opportunity. My name is Naman. I'm a senior business analyst living out of Chicago, work at Cushman and Wakefield for my 9 to 5. But do believe that the topic of our conversation here today is more around the 5 to 9, which is what I use to primarily create content on YouTube, but it's not limited to YouTube. I just love creating content, just pretty much anywhere it is possible to create content as of March 2026. So, yeah, that's kind of what brings me here. That's just something I'm really passionate about. And my goal here is for those listening to I really want to make it worth your while to tune in, just because we live in an attention economy, and having done this enough times, the only gift that I can give to anybody listening is to take away one good thing, one actionable piece of advice that you apply, maybe even once in your life. Even that's a win for me. So that's kind of my agenda here today, if I can say that.
That is extremely awesome. You set the bar up in a way that you actually are using your YouTube skills by hooking the audience and giving them something to bite on. By the way, whoever is joining us live, the reason I wanted to do the Beyond Grad Show live was so that there can be interaction, any interaction. Sometimes it's a few, sometimes it's a whole lot of interaction. But if you are joining us live, just tell us hi on whatever platform that you're joining us from. So just in the comment section of that platform, just say, hi, I'm so and so, and I'm joining from X, Y, and Z. You can even ask some questions. I'm going to take questions in as and when it fits the topic of the conversation. And if not, then we can take them in the end as well. On that note, Naman, how many YouTube videos, to set the stage, how many YouTube videos have you published? And what has been the view count? I know I shared that in the title or at least somewhere in the thumbnail, maybe.
Mhm.
But yeah, I would love to know the exact number now.
Yeah, so it's funny you asked this today. I think I'm going to upload my 1000th video like tomorrow or this week at some point,
Wow.
hopefully. So that includes shorts.
Yes.
Just want to,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's not just all long form. But as far as the podcast goes, I'm 96 episodes deep. So we'll also be hitting that major milestone of episode 100 on the Ready Set Do podcast, also in about 3 or 4 weeks from now. So 97th episode will go out tomorrow. So that means, yeah, in the next 3 weeks we will hit episode 100. As for the views, I'm approaching 600,000 on YouTube. I don't really count other stuff because mostly I don't care, to be really honest. YouTube is the one shining metric that I care the most about. For my podcast, the audio listens is something that um I actually give even more importance to audio listens than YouTube views.
Hmm.
And the reason is because, even though, as I just said, I have 600,000 on YouTube, on my Spotify or just across the audio show, I just hit 1,500 listens across all my episodes.
Okay.
So, as you can imagine, that stuff is really somebody out there that's tuning in, not because you hook them through cognitively overloading them through videos or visuals or sounds or making funny faces. Not that I do that, but because of the ideas that you're sharing. And that for me is just the peak of content creation, because that is somebody that is bought in.
Hmm.
It's not somebody that you tricked into looking at your stuff through a constantly scrolling feed or whatnot.
Hmm.
So yeah, those are kind of where my numbers are at currently.
The average duration, or sorry, the average consumer duration is still pretty high, I'm assuming.
It they actually so that's the funny thing about YouTube is once you've been doing it enough, it all just kind of normalizes into one big glob, really, of numbers that you just stop caring about. Like, I don't know if it happens to everyone, but truly, where I'm at currently in my content creation journey, I'm not even looking at views necessarily. I know it's like the number of that graph increasing, it's fixed at this point, right? Like until I do something drastic, that's not going to change. So I used to really obsess over the YouTube studio, look at all of my metrics and such. I don't know. I just kind of stopped doing that, just mostly because it stopped adding any value necessarily. I mean, don't get me wrong. Sometimes I'll put out like a really important passion project, right? That's actually not related to anything value inducing or whatever. Like I did a tier ranking of this Green Day album called 21st Century Breakdown, where I ranked all of the albums. Why? Just because I wanted to. And that is the like I do look at the AVD for that, just because it's something that I'm passionate about, and that means something to me. But with this other stuff, a lot of it is just and this is just how I look at content now. It's just you kind of check in. A lot of it is just checking in. You don't really, you learn, I guess, to not have expectations. You just do your thing. Every Wednesday you upload. If it's a hit, if it's a miss, Thursday you're working on the next episode anyway, right? So there's really no point looking at metrics all that much, at least when you're at like in 2 years of your content creation journey.
Okay. Oh, can you hear me now? I think.
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah, I wasn't able to hear. Yeah.
Rookie mistake. I pushed mute on my mic.
Gotcha.
So I see where you're going with this, right? That you are not caring about views, you are not caring about average view duration. And we'll definitely come to why that is important, especially as you are starting out. Although you are
Mhm.
going to be on your 100th episode pretty soon and more than 1,000 episodes, including shorts. I mean, that is awesome. We'll definitely touch upon that
Thank
as
you.
well. Let's set the
Thank you.
stage further. Like, you are a recent immigrant to the US. Like, when did you graduate? When did you start YouTube? Let's talk about that journey.
Yeah, so I moved to the US January of 2020, got about 1.5 months before the world decided to check out. So that was really fun. Then graduated in fall of 2022. First YouTube video was uploaded April 4th, 2024. So about 1.5 years from graduation is when, I pulled the trigger, so to speak, and then pretty much haven't looked back.
was what was the time gap between you wanting to create something on YouTube and actually creating something on YouTube?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a twisty story. I'll keep it really short and crisp. I knew my entire life I was going to have a YouTube channel. I grew up on YouTube. It's actually the only platform that I have. I haven't watched Netflix or Prime in years now, right? So I just literally obsess over YouTube. I have been this way the whole time. So I knew I always wanted a channel, and in February of 2024, I had what turned out to be, thankfully, a fall, like a, fake near death experience.
Hmm.
And not to just casually spring that, and don't want to jar any of our listeners, but I spent a day in the ER,
Hmm.
and as I was recording my like goodbyes to my parents, so it was anyway.
What?
We can go more into that if you're interested, but I remember feeling for about 4 or 5 hours that my one big regret that I'm going to die, right, in my head anyway. And my one big regret was, why did I not start my YouTube channel? It's so funny to think about that now. And then I do think that was the straw that broke the camel's back. So, which is why in about a month, I had not just taken action, but literally pulled the trigger on that particular piece. So that's kind of how it happened.
It
Yeah,
doesn't even
if
sound like a straw. It sounds like a 10-ton anvil that fell on the camel's back. I mean, we can.
it was a bit much. Yeah.
But you said fake. I mean, why was it fake? I mean, if you were recording
Yeah.
videos,
So,
there must be something going on.
uh-huh. Right. So what happened was a simple visit to the primary physician turned out to be, what turned out to be again was, it's like a known variation of arrhythmia in the heart, right? So for a person that doesn't have all of the ER type machinery, so when they check your troponins, for people that watch Dr. Mike on YouTube, they will know what I'm talking about. But basically, the primary care person, from an EKG, sense that something is messed up. They made me sign this little form that said, I recognize that I can die. And then she told me, do you want me to book you an ambulance? And I was like, I'll just Uber to the nearest ER. Because, what, like you're always told that ambulances cost tens of thousands of dollars. So I show up to the ER. They confirmed, they were like, yep, there's something definitely going on. 6 hours later, after all their tests, there was even a little ultrasound, thrown in there. Turns out that it's like a perfectly known but rare type of arrhythmia. It doesn't affect my life in any way. I can just continue to be active, do whatever that I'm doing. But so that's why it kind of turned out to be a scare. But while that whole thing was happening, they had me like admitted. I still have the band from the hospital on my fridge, just because of how impactful that day was for me. I don't know, like, I don't really know how to um word it, I guess, but I went through a little bit of a emotional storm that day, and a lot of things changed in my life. Not the biggest one of which was, this whole YouTube stuff.
And I wouldn't like say YouTube like, I mean, you're on your, you have such a big scare and all you're thinking about is YouTube. I wouldn't, because I think a photographer or somebody who's passionate about photography would feel that way. Somebody who's passionate about painting would feel that way.
Hmm.
Somebody
Hmm.
like who's passionate about building products, like even hardware products. I mean, they would feel that way as well.
Hmm.
So in a unique way, I'm glad you had that experience that pushed you to do it. But even between then, that okay, I regret not creating a YouTube video or a show, to creating one, what were the fears that were prevalent and were stopping you from actually hitting the publish button?
Honestly, the biggest one was just spotlight effect. I was just petrified of what my friends would feel. I was petrified of being made fun of. I was really afraid of my peers being like, what is this try hard trying to do, can get a load of that guy, type of thing. That was it, honestly. Like, that was the only thing that had stopped me for years until that point. And I don't know, I think because of all of this turmoil, and again, there were few, it really was the perfect storm. I remember seeing this meme. You know how the universe just comes together sometimes. So this meme by this YouTuber that, again, I watched for years now, I still watch him. He's called Leon Lush. Go check him out for anyone listening. He's just great commentary type videos. So he put out this meme. It was the picture of the earth, top and bottom. The caption was, the earth before you start making content, the earth after you start making content. It was the same picture. And it's such a silly meme, right? Like, you don't even think about it, you just forget it. Well, I didn't. It for some reason, just because of everything else that I was going through, I was like, you know what, this is it, we are going to do it. So what I did was, I found this friend who wasn't really a friend. I went to school with him, and he's a really big MBA content creator now, based out of India. He's really big, so he has like million plus followers on Instagram. So I reached out to him, hadn't been in touch for months at that point, years actually. And I was like, hey, I'm thinking of starting this show. I would love to invite you as my first guest. Is that something you would want to do? And he was kind enough to accept. Shout out Anant Chajar. That's his like YouTube. And my goal of doing this was that the friend, somebody that I actually knew, that's just another excuse for me to be like, that was fun. Let's just go on with life, right? But because I went out of my way, grabbed what was the perfect intersection of a stranger and a friend, while still being valuable, while still thinking a little bit more around the metrics, like it'll give me a little boost in some way. Not that that was important that much. So yeah, he was kind enough to record. And then what ended up happening was, I actually uploaded the episode just to test out how Spotify and RSS feeds and all of those things work. And then I found out, when trying to delete it, that it doesn't actually let you delete your podcast if you only have one episode uploaded. So on a random Wednesday noon, I realized that I guess we're doing Wednesday uploads now. And so that's, I was just literally stuck with it in a way, because I couldn't delete it. And every cell in my body was squirming. I was just like, oh my gosh, let's just not tell anybody. It's whatever. But I ended up following through, and the only thing I promised myself was no matter what happens, I upload every Wednesday. That's it. That's literally all I care about. And so I did for the next 18 months or so before I was like, okay, this is in control. Other things were happening in my life. So now I don't do Wednesday uploads anymore. I just do weekly. But yeah, that's kind of, sorry to go off on, I don't know, like 6,000 different tangents, but hopefully some of that was hopefully helpful. You're muted again.
That was not at all a tangent. It was basically you sharing about the spotlight effect, which is real for all of us who create content. And you talked about that juxtaposition, right? Which is the Earth's image before you create content and after you create content. I absolutely agree with that, especially when you are looking from outside in. But
Mhm.
if you're looking
Yeah.
from inside out, you can clearly create a distinction between the world before you started creating content and the
Yep.
world after you start creating content. I mean, you go through so many transformations,
Yep.
and then you also start looking at the world quite differently.
Completely
A,
differently. Yep.
a funny thing is, I was recently, we were all traveling, a bunch of content creators met in SF, and sometimes something would happen, and just as a joke, everybody would say, "Oh, that's a LinkedIn post," right? Which is now you are starting to see posts and content in everything that you do. And I don't
Yeah.
see that. I don't say that as a way to say, "Oh man, our mind is just occupied with that." No, it's just creativity. You don't need
Right.
to take action on all of it. It's just fun things that happen.
Yeah.
Very cool that you had a friend to start with. I think I was lucky enough to do that as well. So my
Nice.
first episode was Yuri, and
Nice.
some people might know him, some people
Yeah.
might not. He's also a content creator. He was kicking my ass behind the scenes. At one point, he's like, "Dude, I've heard you talk about this shit for 6 months. Where is the video?" So I had to create it and I had to send it to him. So completely understand all the things you did and the spotlight effect and the different junctions that you shared.
Mhm.
What my question would be in this case is, now you wanted to create, but you still wanted to know what to create, right? The what. Sometimes a lot of people get stuck in, okay, what do I create content about?
Mhm.
How did you go about choosing the topic, the idea, and everything? And by the way, if you hear some noise in the background, it's just that's the beauty of life. My daughter is just doing Kathak right outside my door
Love
right
it.
now. So,
That's awesome. No, that's amazing. My nephew loves to practice dance as well. Unfortunately I don't live with him, so that's great that your daughter is doing that. I think that's, yeah, really really nice to get them into creative stuff early, so when they grow up, they don't have to worry about what content to make. Right? It just comes out from within, which weirdly is kind of what I would say. So in my case, the reason why I chose the podcast format was that in my head, obviously naive at the time, I thought that would be really straightforward, right? I just invite a guest, have an engaging conversation, call it a day. Well, as it turns out, and as I know now, and maybe you will probably relate to this at least a little bit, but a podcast is actually playing the content game on the highest difficulty there is. So my advice to, and people ask me this all the time, right? I actually tell them, don't start a podcast, do whatever you want to do as a creator, especially when you're starting out. Do not start a podcast until you're really really certain that you really want to, and the theme or your topic or whatever you have is something that you actually care about. Because if you don't, you're not going to do it. Like, I can say this with, it's a small sample size, but 100% of those people no longer are actively putting out content, and that doesn't surprise me. So my advice to most of people that are listening that are trying to start out is, start with the least effort is to reward ratio, right? Just start writing posts on LinkedIn. Writing is the easiest, most, less time consuming, easy to get off it. Don't even worry about Instagram and such, just write. Ultimately, all of content creation can be boiled down to writing. If you're a good writer, you will be good as any format of content creator. And again, none of this is stuff that I knew, unfortunately. I know this now. So But that was my story anyway. So I continued to just do podcasts for about like 12 months, 15ish months. And then I felt confident enough to just start making, well, it started with doing commentary on other podcasts, right? Because I was trying to learn, I was trying to get better at my craft. So I did one with when Narendra Modi had his podcast with Lex Fridman. It was really interesting to me for some reason that why is Lex Fridman of all people, which a lot of people throw shade on him. Anyway, separate discussion. So yeah, so that was one of my first videos around just commentating on podcasts instead of me doing a podcast. So then I branched out and to now where I pretty much it's actually out of control now. I need to have a plan at this point in terms of what to put out, but that was my journey.
If you were going to do a podcast, by the way, why do you say it is on the highest difficulty? Let's dig into that for a
Yep.
minute or so.
Perfect. Yeah. So it's a really simple, short answer. In 2026, a podcast, what it has become when you just say the word podcast right to a stranger, it is two celebrities gossiping with each other. Is really what it is, at least the way I see it. And I'm curious to hear your take on this. So when you ask somebody to invest, let's even say 30 plus minutes, right? Because for me, how is it a podcast if it's not even 30 minutes? To invest that amount of time hearing two people talk that you don't know, that you've never seen before, on a topic that you're semi-ish interested on, it's a huge investment to ask for. Like, why would somebody watch that? Like, I ask myself this: when was the last time I watched a podcast where I didn't know at least one of the host or the guest? The answer is I don't know, like never. So but then it's not fun to be on the other side of that, which is what you have to be if you're starting out, unless you're Lex Fridman and your fifth episode was Elon Musk, right? Most of us are not like that. So that is my reasoning around that. Would you agree? I'm actually curious.
I look at it a little differently. I
Yeah, I'm
think
curious, tell me.
I think the podcast is less for growth and it's more for trust. I think podcast is a great medium to build trust with people because they are choosing to invest their time, hard-earned time, in
Hmm.
watching two people talk.
Hmm.
And what you're hoping to get is you're hoping to bring out valuable stories from a person's life and strategies. So, stories and strategies. I think we
Yeah.
need both as humans to take action. One or the other rarely actually brings about any change. So, I see it as a great medium to build trust, even if it is not a great medium to build subscriber growth
Hmm.
pretty soon. Now, I was just talking to somebody recently, is that you can only be a second time author if you've written your first book. So you can only be Raj Shamani if you've done thousands of podcast episodes. Now, nobody will question Raj Shamani about, okay, why are you making podcasts, right? He's built a massive empire on it. Same with the Diary of CEO, although I don't know his life a lot more.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know his life much, but sometimes you can do a hard thing for a really long time. If you are in it for the long game, you can do it for a really long time to see like growth that then you don't see as a long form video creator, especially in the help space.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. And I think part of the my rationale was that for most people, they're just not going to stick around for that long in terms of their own investment. At least that's what I've seen. Which is why I guess, yeah, for people that have that plan, as which you said, which I completely agree with, yeah, building trust, there are a few mediums that do it better than podcasts, but it's that trade-off, right? Like the trade-off is that it seems like you're crawling, which you just need to be really steel-willed to go through that, I guess, unless you know what you're doing.
Yeah, and you also have some inspiration, right? So if you are being inspired by somebody who does it, then you're more likely to gravitate towards it. If you've been benefited by podcasts in the past, you are going to be gravitated towards that. For me, the inspiration comes from Dave Ramsey, although I don't subscribe to a lot of his personal finance stuff, what I do subscribe to is the way that he has built a massive entrepreneurial business.
Uh-huh.
That guy has been going live every weekday for the past 5 or 6 years on YouTube. Even more if you think about his radio career, right? So
Hmm.
again, you can't get to year five unless you do year one, two, three, and four, which are a little bit under the iceberg under the water, so to speak. So
Exactly. Yep.
what I find challenging with podcasting is the edit of it. And that's why I think I choose to do it live. So that's my excuse to not do editing. Plus, at the same time, bring that human perspective where if somebody listening live wants to ask questions, that they can do that. I have been
Hmm.
able to do that for the past episodes, and it's one of the best things about this. We can go into like you and I especially can go deep into the weeds when it comes to podcasting and other things. What I'm curious to know is why professional development podcasts? Like, was there an urge to do something like that? Were you thinking that, okay, I'm here in the US, my career is going to be one of the most important things? I know I'm asking a leading question, but I'm
Hmm.
also giving you some time to think, which is why that particular idea and not anything else? I mean, it could be a cricket podcast for that matter, but why not that and why professional development?
So I think it's such a great question because it hits on just so much, and all of it is important. So if I were to be 100% truthful, and just not reinvent the wheel here, or there's a better phrase for this, rewrite history, that's what I was looking
Mm,
for. So if I were to not rewrite history, the way it started was that I actually had no intention really of doing professional development stuff. The way it started was, and my entire inspiration, which is something you just brought up, was the fact that I think this is largely true to this date, but especially as of April 2024, there were no podcasts that really talked about that first step, right? So it was just all inspiration stuff, as you said, right? So it's great. I love inspiration. Everybody is really happy to hear how these people made their millions, but when they share that, it's them giving you their lottery ticket, right? It worked for them, great, but it's not going to work for you, and it's just not going to work for anyone actually. You have to like curate and make your own path. And what I realized was, when I looked long and hard, that nobody talks about those first steps. So then my problem statement became that I'm pretty esoteric as an individual. I love learning about pretty much everything. It's just something that brings me great joy. It's kind of low key the purpose of my existence. Now I was like, well, I do want to learn about the first step, but I don't want to limit it to just one thing. So I was like, how great could it be if I talk to a DJ one week, if I talk to an artist the next week, a data scientist the third week, an 8-year old the fourth week, a Hindu guru that lives in like the forest my fifth week. So that was my theme, right? To focus on the first step, but across age, industry, and geography agnostic guests. Except we don't live in make believe cuckoo land. Where we live is on the ground on earth. And as I learned, somewhat harshly, if I can admit, I realized that unless the content that I'm producing week in, week out is in some way, shape, or size tied to who I am, my current present stature in life and such, it's just not going to resonate, right? I'm just going to come across as a fraud, which is a harsh term, but I would stick by that. So then it became a balancing act of doing 3 episodes worth of this professional development stuff, so I can then have the runway to do my fourth episode of this like forensic science master student, which is just an episode that I loved so much it got 140 views. Which is brutal, right? Because you pour so much into it, and that's what you get. And then freaking data science interview tricks gets like 2000 in 2 hours, and you're like, great. We learn and we go. So again, that's really really how it turned out to be where I am currently.
I think teaching somebody that does not seem immediately helpful is a luxury point that you can get to. But again,
Beautiful.
you
I
have
love
to
that.
keep
Yeah.
keep trying it that way. But in the beginning, people just want to get to where they want to get to, and slowly you build again trust where, okay, this is not something that you had even thought about, but here's a guest and here's what you will learn from them. And then that's actually where people change their minds and open their minds to new things. But you and I wouldn't give anybody the time that we did not trust, or we were just
Exactly.
starting out.
100%.
So I'm glad that you're trying those out, and to anybody listening as well, right? Oops.
You're back.
Okay.
Yeah. I thought you did a
No,
little magic trick. To anybody listening, see ya.
another another fun thing about being live is this tech issues. So, oh,
You're good. I can hear you fine.
okay, okay. For some reason, maybe I was not moving my screen. It just started to get into screensaver mode. All right. So it is really important to know that sometimes you need to make stuff that people care about, and sometimes then you make stuff that you care about. I know a content creator called Jeff Su, who's become like a acquaintance of sorts, maybe a
Cool.
friend even,
That's awesome.
and he talked about this. If I remember correctly, it was him talking about this, which is 4 episodes are for people, 1 episode is for me, and that's how he charted his creation journey. I should actually probably ask him if I'm quoting him correctly or not.
Well, you're
So
quoting me correctly, I'll tell you that much. So,
okay, great.
because that's exactly what I was trying to get at. Yep, exactly right.
Okay. So then let's get into first, I want to get into the ground reality, and then I'll get into how this is all helping you in your nine to
Mhm.
five as well. Because I
Uh-huh.
think a lot of people underestimate how your side projects can supercharge what you are doing in your 9 to 5. But let's go into the ground reality a little bit, which is
Sure.
talk to me about tools that you used. Like anybody starting out and trying to create a YouTube video, like what would you suggest their starting toolkit to look like?
Great question. One also that I get a lot. I do always like to preface any conversation around tools with a brief conversation around processes. Um, Step one, kill your goals, right? Like just and again, sometimes I use spiky language, which is over exaggerated a little bit, but it mostly comes from a good place. So what I mean by that is, um you're not going to stick to a plan that is linked to a goal, right? So let's say you start and your goal is to get to, I don't know, like 100 subscribers. You do that and then what, right? So then you go, great, 1000 subscribers, and then what, right? So the problem with goals is that they're finite, and goals that are infinite are not helpful, right? So you can aim for a million, but again, that's just not a helpful goal. Therefore, what I like to do, and this is all of this is just stuff that I've learned through iterating, stand by your process, right? Have a process for yourself. You can spend as much time as you want curating the process itself. Once you land on it, once you lock it down, you're not allowed to change that. Now in my case, my entire framework, everything I did, all of my hours that were spent, was built around the simple idea that when it's Wednesday, if it's 11:59 p.m., I better have uploaded an episode, and there are no exceptions. Absolutely no exceptions were allowed. If I don't, I die, or something like that. At least in my head,
And you've almost done that before.
I did until I voluntarily stopped doing it, just simply because I didn't need the goal. Like I outgrew that process, so it
Mm,
became not even a habit. Like it became a personality trait for me to wake up at 6 and do my 6 to 8 before my work starts and spend that time on the podcast. I
mm.
need to do that now. It's something that in the beginning it was like, oh man, and now it's like, thank you, this is all I have, so I hold on to it with dear life. So
Mm,
it saved me, if
mm,
if I can even say that. But anyway, enough of the philosophizing. As far as tools go, you literally don't need anything. Like you just need an iPhone. You do not need one of those like little mics. Definitely don't need that. My first camera was purchased 6 months of consistently putting stuff out. My first mic was purchased 3 months of it. So all of that is just, think of them as skill upgrades in an RPG game, right? It's okay to start with your knuckles. That's how every game starts, right? It's good enough, right? That's why you're in the game. You don't need your machete or sniper on level 1, right? You won't know what to do with it. um as far as other tools go, Riverside is something that I swear by. I've said this multiple times before, but my show would simply not exist without Riverside. And this goes back to something you were sharing earlier about editing. It removes the need to edit a podcast pretty much. I know you are
Okay.
somewhat aware with it. Maybe are you?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was aware of it removing silences and stuff like that, but I didn't know that it removed like editing completely.
Yep.
Or
So just a quick snapshot. What it does is, to say this was Riverside, right? You close your recording, you take a walk, you come back 5 minutes later, you have the entire transcript generated of every word that was spoken here. Say you want to cut out the part where I was blabbing for 5 minutes straight without any point. You just select that entire thing, right click, delete. It deletes it from the video without you even having to open a video editor ever,
Hmm.
right? So again, voice normalization, studio audio upgrades. Again, pretty much if you need to do something for a podcast, it does, just out of the box.
Hmm.
Those are my big two. Other than that, something that tricks people up is just video editing. It is one of those things where you really need to temper your expectations. It is possible to go into YouTube tutorial hell and do nothing after 2 weeks and multiple dozen hours spent. I would say make it your goal to publish a video in a fixed deadline. Again, I don't care what it is. You can have it weekly, monthly, bi monthly, literally doesn't matter. Hold yourself accountable, have that self respect to be like, I committed this to myself, I'm going to do it. Why? No one cares, great, but I'm going to do it. And that honestly is more valuable than any tool related discussion that genuinely I feel we can possibly have, because just that will carry you through everything. It's just so powerful as a notion that it's never the tool that trick people up, it's always the lack of a process that prevent and that cause the death of content creators before they're even born.
Hmm. So it is processes. It is, don't think about you need the best tools right at the beginning. A YouTube, sorry, iPhone is more than enough to start with. You can upgrade with your microphone, upgrade your camera. Riverside is what you use for podcasts and then video editing. Do you use a specific video editing tool that you like?
So I use Riverside actually also for my talking head or explainer type videos on YouTube, because as I said, say you were trying to explain something and you did a bad take, you fib a word or something, again, you can just go into the transcript and just delete that, right? So, and you can add your B-rolls, you can add your stickers, pictures, whatever you need. So in my case, 90% of the time, my all of my video editing workflow lives on my Chrome without even having to open a video editor. Is just how
That's very
powerful
cool.
Riverside is. Yeah, exactly. There's no limit, right? So there's no limit on how much content I have. Hours, literally hundreds of hours of content on there that just lives there. Having said that, video editing is still important for the other 10%. It's one of those where it just depends on what you start with. I happen to start with CapCut, so I'm kind of married to CapCut now forever. It really doesn't matter. At least every MacBook comes with an iMovie. For my first 50 episodes, maybe 30 episodes, I was just doing iMovie for the to slap my little intro for before my podcast, have my little theme song, put in the video actual podcast from Riverside, put in my outro. That's it. Hit export, publish to YouTube. So it was really more of a assembler than an actual video editor, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So
because you are doing most of the video editing in Riverside already.
exactly. Yep.
Interesting. So now let's jump into the part of how it applies, how it all fits in with your career and your career aspirations.
Mhm.
Talk to me at a talk to me specifically how creating a YouTube podcast show and getting all these insane number of views that you have gotten, how does that help your 9 to 5 journey?
Yeah. So I think the best way to approach this question, or for me to try to explain this, would be across two levels. We can break them down as intangible benefits and tangible benefits. I want to start with intangible just because maybe you're already sensing that trend where I like to focus more on, the philosophy side of things, if you will.
But let me switch that. I know
Okay,
I'm interjecting, but let me
please.
switch that. Yeah, go with the tangibles first, and then we'll get
Great.
into the intangibles.
Perfect. Yep. So for tangible, it teaches you how to be a good writer. It teaches you how to be confident in a meeting when you're trying to push back against a stakeholder that is, many levels of hierarchy above you. There is a tasteful way to do this, which is not that different from pushing back to a guest that you've never spoken to before, that is trying to say something that you don't fully understand or that you're trying to go against. So it's kind of getting those free reps without any stakes, because in my podcast it doesn't matter, right? I can just say whatever, be whatever, and it'll be fine. But when it comes to fruition, is that when you have an idea, and normally I would just be quiet, right? Because I would just be like, okay, I guess they're right because they're superior, which is no longer the case because I just now feel empowered, and it's second nature for me to, again, the important word here is tastefully push back, convey my ideas in a way that I've gotten many, 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 many dozens of reps in terms of just communicating. And then yeah, we can keep going, like, so writing, packaging a content, doing marketing, human psychology, right? Because all of YouTube thumbnail making is ultimately, if you boil that ocean down to a drop, you would be left with human psychology, right? What can you use to convince this stranger that doesn't even exist, right? You have 1 second to get them to buy something that you're selling. Just that problem itself for me is absolutely incredible. It's just, it's those reps that you get in, right? So and then they start to transfer over to every aspect of your life. You just become more confident, you stand your ground, right? You have a more straight posture, if you will. I don't know, is any of that kind of making sense?
Absolutely. I think you, in a way, become an entrepreneur of a product when you are a creator.
Yep.
So, when you become an entrepreneur of a product, you are trying to learn everything. You're trying to learn product design, you're trying to learn marketing, you're trying to learn sales, persuasion, and all of that can go back into your 9 to 5.
Yep.
Do you remember? Maybe I'm putting you on a spot here. Do you have an example for us
Hmm.
of how, like, no one with no creator experience would behave in a particular situation at work versus how you would behave now that you have these additional skills?
Yeah, so I think that is really the question to ask here, right? And I do think the answer to that is, it does tie back to all of those intangible benefits that I was talking about that just change you. It's like an operating system upgrade that your human gets, or of the body that you inhabit. So in my case, what all of this has done is that it has made me, if I were to condense it into one idea, is that it has made me extremely high agency. Now, what that means, and maybe you're aware, but I'll just break it down. So, think of a tricycle, right? You have disagreeability, you have a bias to action, and you have clear thinking. When you combine these three things, what you get is high agency. So, what content creation teaches you is that really there are no problems that you cannot solve given physics rules apply to them, right? So, this is a concept that I don't know, I've borrowed from how many places. This is not an original idea, but it's really that simple. So if you're trying to get 1,000 impressions on a LinkedIn post, that is an optimization problem, and it has nothing to do with how well you can write, what your idea is, who you are. All of those, like, variables become just that, variables, right? It's the problem that you're solving, and then it starts to apply to every single aspect of your life. It doesn't even matter what you're trying to do. You just become a machine that solves problems across the board without even stopping to think why or how. Completionism over perfectionism, right? All of those ideals that are easy to spout, you catch yourself exercising in your day-to-day life. And I do think, which is why I like to share more on the intangible side, is that because of that layer of upgrade on your operating system itself, all of the apps that you now run differently, right? Because the inherent layer that runs them is changed. It's just no longer even the same person, which is something you were alluding to in the beginning of your conversation. So now, to actually answer your question, In a lot of those cases, I would have been like, oh, this is too hard. I need to prepare more. I need more time to think. I need more time to plan. I now know that that's just a coping mechanism. It's just not true. I could do this in 2 minutes if I really wanted to. And I think that is really the biggest change that has happened through all of this. Sometimes I hate it. I'm like, can I just trick myself that I need to watch 6 more YouTube tutorials before I do this? And then I'm like, nope, can't have that.
I totally understand with the intellectual procrastination that you're talking about, right? Procrastination, or there's a Stephen Pressfield book that I love, which is called The War of Art. And it talks about all
Yep.
the resistances we have to creating something that is difficult to do, like to creation, just to the act of creation. And he talks about how intellectualism and procrastination and perfection and all of these things are actually resistance in a way to doing the hard thing that needs to be done. Your high agency that you talk about, has that been noticed by anybody at work? Like, what have been some of the interesting anecdotes or feedback that you have gotten from leaders at workplace or even your peers for that matter?
Yeah, I think the biggest just would be being open to just take up really challenging problems that, for the most part, people aren't like trying to run over each other to get at, right? Just because, as I was saying, a lot of it, in when you're just stopping to think about a problem, you're like, yeah, maybe you could do it that way, maybe you could do it this way, maybe this, there's some R&D is a term that is thrown around a lot, that you could do around that situation. I now catch myself just across my various activities at work, pouncing on a problem first, thinking later. And I will admit, sometimes that is to my detriment, right? Maybe that thing was best left alone. And, it would be important to call that out. But the way it has been noticed is that, I mean, people just take attention when you go out of your way to fix something for somebody that you really didn't have to, right? Like, your life was going on, you have your work, they have theirs. And then when you go out of your way to like help debug somebody with something, right, help troubleshoot a certain problem that they were having, when they know that this isn't even necessarily in your wheelhouse, you went out of your way to randomly solve this problem for, I don't know, aura farming or a side quest or whatever you call it, right? I do think that's when people really start to speak your names in rooms where your name would not come up otherwise, right? Your effects really start to transcend your physical presence. And again, for me, that is one of literally the reasons to live life, if you ask me. Just, spend each day with, like, helping one person make their day better, and it's a day worth living. So
You started this entire conversation with spotlight effect and how that was a big barrier towards you actually creating your first YouTube video. Now let's talk about the actual maybe benefit or a compliment that you've heard because you shined a spotlight on yourself by creating content. Like, what are the cool things you heard from people at work or people outside of work that kept motivating you from time to time to do what you were doing?
yeah, so it's funny, the biggest validation or lack thereof of the value of the spotlight effect I got was that most people don't care. And I don't know if this is good or bad news. I guess it depends on who you ask. Most people just genuinely don't care. For me, that's great news, right? That's just the type of person I am. So naturally, that kind of everything that you kind of ask goes downstream from that. Like, sure, it'll come up at work sometimes, and somebody will be like, hey, how's the pod going? Are you still doing that? I'll be like, yeah, it's good, great, great. Life goes on. Where I've actually experienced, I would say, benefits, if that's a term you can use, is definitely more on the outside work statues, where like people just start. It's so funny how this works, but people almost start to associate certain ideas with you without you ever necessarily asking to be associated with those ideas. What I mean by that is, because I've been on this big we'll just take a very micro example. Right now I've been on like a big open claw binge. I've just been consumed by it, if you will. And obviously I've been just putting out a bunch of content around that on YouTube and otherwise. And I've had so many people just ask me on YouTube comments or just in my DMs and such that, hey, I'm trying to build this, do you know? And a lot of it is not even like trying to be my fans or whatever, but they're just like, hey, I'm also working on something like this, I would love to compare notes. And then we do, and it's like the greatest conversation I've had that month. So I don't know if you would call that a benefit. For me it 100% is, right? Because I would not have met this person otherwise. So I would say, has my life changed from this? No, same. But has it gotten better? Yeah, 100%. Slightly, just a little bit better.
And I think there are accelerations in there that may not seem obvious right now. Maybe they do, but acceleration at work, acceleration in your network, just like you mentioned, now you are finding your tribe of people who are doing things that are similar to you. There are accelerations happening in your career right now that you will only be able to join the dots later. And looking back, you'll be able to do that. I think
Yep.
what is interesting here is I've been always curious about this particular question because you started the podcast medium, which requires you to go out and get people to come on your podcast. You, somebody who's in Chicago, by the way, why is it called Chicago?
It's a good question. I wish I knew the answer to that. It's a good
Somebody needs to
question.
find out. I ask everybody from Chicago why do people call it Chicago? Chicago.
What
And
I
then the
can
same thing.
offer, yeah, sorry, what I
Yeah.
can offer is that I know a bunch of surrounding areas were based around names of Indian tribes. So maybe that
Okay.
is something, but again, this is not, don't quote me on that.
Interesting. The other one that trips me up is Toronto, which is called by the local people as Toronto. And I'm
Yep.
like, okay, wait, what?
Yep.
Uh, but you started with a zero, like I wouldn't say zero network. You started with your friend who was your first guest. That's
Mhm.
you tapping into your network. How did you get other guests to come in as somebody who was new to a country, new to like top performers, like didn't know many top performers around? Talk to me about the networking aspect of it.
Yeah, I would say anything I say here would actually, it would need to be underlined by the fact that people that I reached out to, especially while starting out, were incredibly kind. I just want to say that right out of the bat. In a way that definitely surprised me, it humbled me. It was actually so wholesome, honestly. And I know you were one of those people as well, so you know what I'm talking about. And you were one of those people that was kind enough to really just take pity on just this guy that's kind of being annoying. But to actually answer your question, I have kind of already answered it around my big idea around processes. So you have your time cut out every Saturday from 12 to 4, or really it doesn't even matter when, but I'm going to do outreach. Now what does outreach look like? You start like you spend hours pouring into a little cold DM type, like just message. You send it out to 10 people, pray for the best. One people replies, you realize that okay, this probably needs more tweaking. Now you do that 50 times across 50 Saturdays. Remember, the goal here is to not get to perfection. There is no such thing. The best you can is good enough. Perfection is the enemy of the perfectly adequate. So then you just iterate just infinitely. I'm still iterating on my cold DM template slash pitch, and you send it out, right? It becomes, you boil it down to a numbers game, right? If you reach out to 50 people, five are just mathematically bound to respond. You go from there, right? So again, it's just processes. You just have to have those systems in place so that you set yourself up to win, even on weeks where you weren't at home or you had like soccer, whatever, you were traveling. It's just all about having those systems in place.
That is very cool. And I know it almost sounds like you are glossing over the fact that, hey, this is what was scheduled on my calendar to do. And I just did it. I think the most disciplined people are like that. But there are a couple nuances I definitely want to hit here. One of them is that people might apply to 1,000 jobs and get 10 interviews, and they'll be okay with that conversion rate.
Mhm.
But people might reach out to 10 people, and if only one respond, which has the same conversion rate, they will feel really bad about themselves. Like they will feel like those 9 people are rejecting them, don't care about them, or nobody's responding to me. I reach out to people, but you still continue to do that. You still continue to send 50 messages across 50 weeks. Why were you able to persevere in that moment?
Honestly, I think I don't even necessarily look at it as perseverance. It really didn't matter to me. I didn't look at it in a way that, oh, they're rejecting me. I looked at it in the way that they don't care. And
Mm,
that made sense to me just logically, right? Why
mm,
would they care? Why, if I received that message, I would probably not be jumping at that, because I go on my
mm,
little link, it has 29 subscribers. I'm not wasting my time with that. Why would they?
mm,
Right? So
mm,
step one, it's never personal. Like I said, people
mm,
don't care, and that's a feature, it's not a bug. So then why
mm.
not double down on that, and then just literally reduce it to a cold methodological, I think I butchered that. Number
Methodical.
Methodical. Thank
and
you.
and
Thank
I'm
you.
and this is me correcting you in the moment, but I do the fib all the time. So
Great. Well, thank you for rescuing me. But yeah, it's just cold methodical numbers game, right? It's just probability. Except this, we're just taking this out of context in this situation, but it's not, because it applies to everything. It applies to the episodes you put out, it applies to the times you fail, it applies to when you're trying to record an intro and apparently you forget how to speak the English language. It's the same thing across the board, right? You get humbled so many times that you just realize, oh, any good thing that happens is actually a bonus. It's not what you're entitled to, it's not what you should be expecting. Treat it like a bonus, because it's literally, that's what it is. It's a bonus when somebody responds. And again, apply that everywhere else. So like I said, it wasn't like I was like, just got punched 16 times and I'm standing up again. No, I didn't care, you know.
I think that's the reframe, right? The reframe is not how to overcome the feeling of being rejected. The reframe is just not feeling rejected by something like this
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
continuing on. Interesting. How has your network changed now than before?
Yeah, I would say, and this is honestly one of the biggest intangible benefits that I really should have mentioned, but it just slipped my mind because there's so many. I love that my network is actually completely full of exactly the type of people that I want to be associated with, which are other high agency people just like myself. Ideas are cheap. Everybody has a million ideas. They don't mean anything, right? They're just useless to me. And I love being around people and being in networks where execution precedes ideation, almost to a point where it feels stupid. It feels like, why would you do that, right? Like, can you think this through? No, I don't want to think it through. That is just the type of person I am, and that's who I want to be surrounded with. And over time, through no tangible effort from me, it's just become that, right? Like, and just other ideas. So I really, something that brings me great joy is helping people actualize or take steps towards things. That's like a common theme you'll probably notice with everything that I do. I've had the chance to mentor at this point around close to 15 people that were trying to start their podcasts. There is no price that I can put to that feeling of walking through something really hard, that, maybe if it's not even that hard to you, but for them, just that feeling of fulfillment that gives you, really, there's just no price to that. And then when you're recommended by that person that, hey, my friend of my friend is facing this issue, can you please help them? I don't know, it's just like, it's so beautiful. I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's just so great, so good.
That is a really big intangible. The network effect, the effect of feeling like you have worked towards something that is extremely hard, then knowing that other people around you exist that are also doing hard things. And for those people to acknowledge you in any way, it can be continued conversation on LinkedIn, or it can be somebody reaching out to you and say, "Hey, I need you to help this friend of mine."
Yeah.
All of it just feels like you are part of a tribe. Something that I wrote about today is that once you do something hard, you will find other people who are doing hard things. They will look at you differently.
Yep. And honestly, some of them have just become such close friends, which they would just simply not if I wasn't in this line of work. So I agree with you. I do think that for people that do their work consciously, it is impossible for you to not attract other people that are walking similar paths. I think it's just like a law of the universe or something at this point. Oops, we lost you. Oh, you're back. Nice.
Okay. I have one final question, and
Uh-huh.
then maybe we'll go into kind of like a rapid fire for
Yeah.
people to know, and for me also to know you beyond what I see you as on LinkedIn or as a podcast host of Ready Set Do. By the way, I really like that name. So
Thank you.
the last
Thank you.
the last question is this, which is, if somebody wants to start on YouTube, they are equally passionate about YouTube as you were. They do not want to create on any other platform, or they might be creating on another platform and but want to start their YouTube journey.
Mhm.
Give them wha- Here's a better question than what I was thinking of. What would Naman do differently if he was starting a YouTube channel right now or creating videos on YouTube right now?
It's a good question. I'm trying to, you know, go out of my way to make my answers sound smarter than it really is, uh, genuinely.
You don't need to.
Well,
Whatever is the truth, give me the unvarnished truth.
well, you so you just pretend you're talking to a wall is really what it all boils down to. So you stand in front of a literal wall and you talk to it about something that you care very deeply about. That's it. And then you replace that with, just a phone in between you and the wall. Whatever comes out, you just put it out there. You're not allowed to perfect it. You're not allowed to make it better. You're not allowed to edit it. You're not allowed to hire an editor. Literally, I can keep going for hours, but you're not allowed any of those things. Just hit publish, man. Like, it's really not that deep. Just hit publish. You will get better over time. I promise you. Obviously, you'll have to seek to do that. Besides this same exercise that it took you, I don't know, like years to get to, the next time when you're doing it, it's going to feel just lame, right? It's like playing a game that you just beat on easy difficulty. It's just boring. You're not going to do that. You'll want to increase the difficulty. You just can't help yourself. And that's when your fifth video will be 500 times better than your first. Really, I mean, genuinely, there's nothing I can say that will beat just this idea of hit publish. It doesn't matter. I promise you, nobody cares. In the best way possible, just hit publish.
Awesome. There has to be a side question here because I know what people in those shoes think, because I was somebody who
Please,
did not start
please.
YouTube for a really long time.
Mhm.
What do you think about a niche or deciding on a topic? How important is it for, like, let's say the first 10 or 20 videos?
Great question. So I'm actually the best and worst person to ask this question because I'm constantly slapped every week by the algorithm because of the fact that I do not have a niche. I just
Hmm,
apparently refuse to have a niche.
hmm,
It, again, if your goal is to get to a certain subscriber count, certain view count, I do think you would benefit from a niche. There's like people way smarter than me have a way more fleshed out ideas around this. Niche down as much as possible and all of that. What I would say as me is that, one, it doesn't matter. Talk about things you care about. It's literally as simple as that. My channel has a freaking Green Day album tier ranking. Make it make sense. And I know I'm punished for that, but my options are either to upload that or not upload anything, or just upload stuff that is going to 100% burn me out, test my process to its limit, force me to fail. And if I can see that from a mile out, why would I do that? So those were my options. There was no option 3. So I just continue to this day, right? I My last guest was an expert authority coach. This week it's going to be an international tax lawyer. What algorithm is going to recommend those things to anyone, right? Like, I'm cooked. Just by definition I'm cooked, and it's okay. Doesn't matter. Just do the thing.
Says the person who has 600,000 views on YouTube. I
I
mean, with all, I mean, that I think I'm pointing out something important here, which is you can have the relationship with content creation the way you want to have it. And even if, like, say, Naman is saying right now that I am getting cooked, I do not have a niche, and the algorithm doesn't know where to fit me, whom to show my videos to, it has found a way to show it to 600,000 people. So there is madness in this, or there is some kind of logic in this madness
Yeah,
as well.
a
So
method in the madness. I'll
a
rescue you back.
method in the madness. Thank you. We are
Now we're
even now.
even. Yep.
Cool. I think I'll end with like four rapid fire questions.
Let's do
And
it.
these are questions that I just want to ask to know Naman more, and not really the professional, the business analyst or the YouTuber,
Oh,
right?
thank you.
The first question on that list is, what is your favorite movie?
It's Nightcrawler with Jake Gyllenhaal. I don't know if you've
Okay.
seen it.
No, I know the actor, but I haven't seen the movie. Okay.
My favorite movie of all time. Nothing comes close.
Nightcrawler.
Hmm.
Okay. Interesting. What is your go to cuisine when you're going out to eat?
I'm just as basic as they come. I'm a big just Indian food stan. It's just hard. It's impossible to beat. I will die on the hill that Indian cuisine is objectively the best cuisine in the world.
Interesting. Bold words there.
Notice how
Nice.
I said objectively. It's not like I'm biased at all.
There's no subjectivity involved there. This one is my personal favorite, and we don't need to dig into it really, but
Yeah,
I love asking this question, which is, do you believe in God?
I do. Yeah, 100%.
Okay. Then the final one is this, and we'll end on this note, which is, let's say there's somebody out there just watching this, learning how to create, how to start their YouTube content. If you could give them a challenge, an action or a set of actions they can do in less than 2 hours in this weekend, this just to
Mhm,
let them get started,
mhm.
what would that challenge be for them?
The challenge would be that pretend that you have the power chosen by God to say anything for 2 minutes, and everybody on earth is forced to hear it. They cannot opt out. I guess if they're deaf, they can read it, right? There's no opting out. What is that thing that you would like to say to the earth? I guess that's step 1, figure that out. Step 2, record it, and then step 3, upload it.
Wow. Okay. Powerful. All right. It was great having you on the show, Naman. A lot of success. I think one of the biggest takeaways for me personally has been process, and how you have been really nailed down on the process. And while you have not taken other like advice out there about niching down and this and that, what you've done is you've executed, and that has shown an acceleration in your network at work. It is awesome to see you take action. I know I've said this to you via messages as well. That is one thing that I have noticed, is that you take action. And that is amazing and fantastic and inspiring. So thank you for being here with us. And where should people go to know more about you and the projects that you are doing?
Yeah, I guess LinkedIn would be the best. Naman Pandey 0796. If you're trying to go to a website, my podcast is readysetdopodcast.com. If you just want a link for just everywhere else that I exist, it's just namanpandey.me. So namanpandey.me is where you can find pretty much everything you need. And truly,
Awesome.
Varun, this has been so fun. Thank you so much. Like, I've honestly learned so much from you as a host. Like, you do so many things so well, and truly, really commendable in terms of just what you're building, and really, really honored to share this time with you here today.
Thank you so much. We'll definitely take that conversation offline because I can definitely learn a lot from what you have done. So thank you for being here and excited to see where you go next.